Canadians heading to the polls next month as Liberal leader Justin Trudeau launching an election. Trudeau asked for the shortest campaign period that we could see, so 36 days it is, meeting Election Day landing on September 20th. And with a fourth wave arriving in Canada, federal party leaders are accusing the Liberals of using the pandemic for political gain. But what should we know before we head to the polls? 36 days, it's going to come very, very fast. For more, I'm joined by political commentator Amanda Galbraith, principal with Navigator. Good morning to you, Amanda.
Good morning.
So I'd like to say this was a surprise. It definitely was not. We knew this was brewing for some time. But I guess the big question is, what can be accomplished in the next 30-plus days? What can the leaders actually say that could potentially move the vote? What do you think?
I mean, they can do lots, right? There's a saying, elections matter, and they certainly do. Well, 36 days is the shortest amount of time. I think you're going to see leaders crisscrossing the country talking about, what they want Canada to be, what the plan for the future is. Aaron O'Toole's come out hard and heavy with an economic platform where he talks about, rebalancing the budget, repatriating how we make vaccines here. We see the Prime Minister leaning heavily into climate change. Into, do you like the way the country's moving forward? Are you happy with that? Then stick with us. And then, of course, we have Jagmeet Singh, who's fighting for votes, I think, in British Columbia, maybe a little bit in Alberta, to see if he can kind of be a bit of a spoiler effect. But it'll be interesting to see. I think 36 days is a lot, even though it seems very short. And also we have, as you mentioned earlier, Afghanistan, which I think could be a bit of a spoiler effect or throw a wild card in on this election campaign.
What do you think needs to happen with any decisions? And again, a lot can happen in the days to come with what's happening with the situation in Afghanistan. What move needs to be made, or announcement needs to be made, or promises in order to get voters turning their attention?
I think deliberately, frankly, the Prime Minister called an election when voters aren't paying attention, right? Most people are at the cottage or on vacation, or they are worried about taking their kids back to school or the fourth wave. So this is a deliberate move on the PM's part. It's a cynical move, but other prime ministers have done so to say, we're going to do this now before the fourth wave really gets difficult. Well, people aren't paying attention and hope that low turnout means we get a majority government. It's up to the opposition leaders, Aaron O'Toole, Jagmeet Singh, Annamie Paul to a lesser extent, and I think the Bloc Québécois as well, to rattle that cage and say, are you happy with this? Are you content with the way this government's going? We have a credible alternative. So it's both, I think, about waking up the electorate to this issue, which frankly, there's lots of people, friends were door knocking. They didn't even know an election was happening. Like, I'm a junkie for this stuff. Most people are not. To say that's what, and then also get their attention enough to see, this is what I want to do for you. And that remains to be seen. The PM is, I think, a very good campaigner. And he presents well in the hustings, but calling a pandemic in the middle of an upcoming fourth wave is very cynical. Doing it, while we see the UK bring back Parliament, we have a crisis in Afghanistan. It's a lot to take on, and I think it'll be very interesting in the coming weeks.
Amanda, in part of our You Sound Off, we had callers and tweets and emails coming through, and just the idea of the sentiment around it. Outside of policy, just how people are feeling, the idea of having to go back to the polls. There was idea of frustration, anger, confusion. Do you think this will work in favor of the Liberals?
I don't. Typically, nobody wants to go to an election. I'm probably one of the 2% of the public that enjoy this stuff, although I think this is, even to me, is a bit above beyond the pall, given we are in the middle of a fourth wave. It's been 2 years into the mandate. And frankly, you can't point to a single major piece of legislation that this government hasn't been able to put through. In fact, all the parties worked with them pretty well through the pandemic to get major spending bills through, to get CERB through. So I think this one may stick a little longer than normal. But the Liberals are banking that it's not, right? That people are going to kind of forget about it in 3 or 4 days once the rhythm of the campaign goes on. But I don't think it'll be forgotten so soon, particularly when we have major issues coming forward and a fourth wave where people may or may not feel safe to vote. So I think the Prime Minister's got a hill to climb there. It's not insurmountable, for sure, because we have had elections in this country. Nova Scotia's had one right now. BC had one. So we had them during the pandemic, but he's got to make a case for that. And I'm not sure he did that quite credibly yesterday.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, 36 days, a lot can happen. That's for sure. Amanda, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us this very early morning.
Thank you for having me.
And that is Amanda Galbraith from Navigator. Thank you for that. 7:11 is your time right now. We're going to bring you more news headlines coming up at 7:30. But right now, we go on upstairs to, I get to say, hello, Danielle Michaud.